Should we be using psychometric tests as part of the hiring process or even in employment in things like management training? In this video, I'm going to answer that exact question. Hello, I'm Jenefer. I'm the founder of Silk Helix. We're a HR consultancy and we will help you by protecting your business, training your business and helping you to grow your business. So let's dive in. Should we be using psychometric tests? Let's start by talking about what we mean by psychometric tests. So first up, we've got ability tests. Ability tests gauge candidates' practical skills, knowledge. They're very focused on the ability to do the task, to do the job. We've then got aptitude tests. These unveil hidden talents, things like people's ability to learn quickly or adapt. We've then got personality tests. This is most commonly associated with psychometric tests. These are things like your Myers-Briggs profiles. They're the things that tell you what type of personality someone's got, whether they're going to culturally fit into the organisation. And then we've got reasoning tests. So things like verbal, numerical, abstract, reasoning, critical thinking, problem solving, exploring all of those things in your reasoning tests. And lastly, we've got situational judgment tests. These assessments put candidates in real life scenarios and give you examples of their decision-making abilities, how they would handle a particular example. So let's talk about the pros and the cons of these tests and whether you should be using them. Psychometric tests do have benefits, particularly ones that focus on skills, abilities, and skills that are really focused on what is needed for that particular role. Testing is always going to be challenging. Some people will do well in test scenarios, some people will struggle, some people may need reasonable adjustments like technology to enable them to have questions read to them, maybe extra time. Let's say if somebody is dyslexic, they may need additional time to do a test. And we're aware of these things, and that's why it's always recommended that you use a professional supplier to do any kind of testing, because it ensures that those tests are validated, that they're well researched, and that you've got qualified people that are interpreting them and can put in place reasonable adjustments when they're needed. And that's certainly what the professional companies will talk to you about. Now, there are tests that you can run as part of a recruitment process that are very job specific, so they're specific to the task someone will really be doing. These don't need qualified professionals. So for example, if I was taking on a HR consultant, I would probably give them a employment contract with some deliberate mistakes in there and ask them to spot the mistakes, because that will be something they'll be doing in their job role, which is testing skills that they need to have in order to do the role. We've also got the kind of inbox or in-tray type exercises. Nowadays that would probably be emails. We'd give them a pile of them and we'd say, how would you deal with these? We might talk them through it or let them talk us through exactly how they would deal with it. We might ask them to prioritise it. If that's relevant to their role and specific to their role, absolutely fine. And you're going to know this because you're employing somebody to do the job, so you're going to know what the job looks like. Anything else, so if we were looking, say, at somebody's math skills or their problem solving skills in a more abstract way, then we should be using validated tests and qualified professionals to be able to deliver those tests. It's often argued that these tests eradicate discrimination. They also take the human bit out of a lot of the processing. So personality tests, for example, may well be used at the first stage in the recruitment process, deciding whether or not somebody even gets a job interview. If you've got large numbers of applicants and you need to root out some and try and work out who you're going to interview, and you don't want to put loads of human time and effort into that, a computer system that can give you a personality profile and say, well, let's interview the ones that fit this profile might be useful. It's certainly a time saver. Whether it's getting you the right candidates though, that's my big question, and it's where I get really nervous about them. So I am all in favour of testing people to ensure that they can do the job you're employing people to do. When they're those role-specific tests, those ones, no real questions over them. Just make sure they really are testing what you want them to. When it comes to personality tests, I have a lot more question marks around these. I have a lot of concerns. So personality tests, these are things like Myers-Briggs, disc profiling. They give you a profile. So these profiles are often used in recruitment to identify people who would fit the culture of the organisation. They're often used in management training to give managers an idea of their own profiles so that they kind of understand who they are, about themselves, and also about their team, where clashes might come, how they can better motivate their team, how they can better communicate with their teams. There's a whole range of reasons these tests are used. The problem is they're not actually that accurate and have very little scientific, if any, scientific background behind them. Myers-Briggs, for example, is not developed by people with any science background and does not have any scientific research building the algorithms that determine what category you're going to be put in. And in fact, research has been done that shows 50% of people will get a different personality assessment the second time they take the test, even if they take that test within a really short time span, within a few weeks. So there are considerable problems with them, and they're often given a lot of weight. So somebody who disagrees with their profile might be assumed to be somebody who is not very self-aware. It's often argued that we shouldn't be arguing with them, we shouldn't be disputing them. It's argued that, well, if managers know your profile and therefore they know how to communicate with you and therefore they know what motivates you, they don't need to get to know you because they know your profile. This is a shortcut, and it's a shortcut to nothing because actually the profiles aren't very accurate, and even within those profiles we can see really different personalities with people who have got effectively the same profile analysis. So using it to avoid getting to know people, to work out how to communicate with somebody without actually asking them, and assuming that without this we don't have self-awareness, we don't know who we are, we don't know what motivates us, we don't know how we communicate, we don't know how we deal with situations. This is a really huge problem. There is research to show that there are problems with these tests when it comes to cultural or language differences. The tests tend to be written in such a way that assumes people have the same cultural background, assumes people have a knowledge and understanding, partake in society in the way that it's expected in the test. And often it's expected that people will react in the same way in different situations. So for example, I would react in the same way at a social gathering or party as I would in a business meeting or in handling a business product. So for example, it might be assumed that I will handle a party or a social gathering outside of work in exactly the same way as I would approach a business meeting, or even my day at work and how I deal with things. For many people, they operate very differently in those scenarios and can do that extremely well. So assuming that asking somebody a question on how they deal with a situation would then translate to other situations is also problematic. This leads me to quite a big question around neurodiversity, people with conditions like CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, people that are currently in domestic abuse or recently have been in domestic abuse situations. All of these people have a tendency to mask, a tendency to be a person in a situation and somebody else in a different situation. Therefore, the question immediately to me is, surely these tests have huge problems for these types of people. And on the masking issue, there is also the fact that you can train people in how to do these tests. Some recruitment companies will offer that training, some universities will offer that training. You can train people, you can look at the tests and guess roughly what you think the employer is going to be looking for, what you think you need to answer in order to get through a recruitment process. Often these tests are so well known, the questionnaires are so standardised that you know which ones to tick to get which answer. And if you're going for a sales role and you know they're looking for an extrovert, you're going to tick the answers that show you're an extrovert. So even without genuine masking and people that really do think, well, actually, yeah, I would do that in that situation, but I wouldn't do it in a different situation. You've got people who are looking at them saying, well, I know I need to get through a recruitment process, so these are the answers I'm going to give in order to get myself an interview. So for me, personality profiling, personality tests, they're just like ticking a box in a magazine. They don't really tell us very much. I don't use them, wouldn't use them in any of my management training for that reason. I think that they create a shortcut, don't really help us to understand ourselves or our teams very well. I wouldn't recommend them to my clients. I certainly wouldn't recommend them in recruitment. I would, however, recommend tests that are specific to abilities for the role. Definitely would recommend those, and I think that there's a lot of worthwhile in both general tests, problem solving, where they are done properly and where they're validated tests, as well as testing people in their skills to do the specific job, as per the examples I gave earlier. Again, as with anything in recruitment, there's always challenges. Recruitment, there is no guarantee in any of these things that we can eliminate bias. Algorithms are created by people, therefore they have bias in them. Eliminating bias is virtually impossible, so none of these are going to guarantee you a recruitment process that is completely free of bias. But what we can do is look at things like personality tests that don't really have any scientific backing to them and a lot of evidence as to why they're problematic. We can take those out. That will help you reduce bias in recruitment processes and in employment as well. They just are not beneficial. They don't help anybody. So if you've got to this point, you can tell I'm not a fan of personality tests, but I do like getting to know people, understanding how your team tick, understanding what motivates them, how you better communicate with them. And in my videos, I give you a whole host of hints and tips on how to do that with a new video every week. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss a single one.